Just like a computer has both hardware and software that affects how it works, your brain and your nervous system have neural software and neural hardware that affect how you respond to stresses and adversities. Your brain and your nervous system develop patterns in ways to respond when you face challenges and adversities, and it learnt to do this from the past. So this is the brain's way of being efficient, where it learns by experience and it predicts that what's happening now is just like that time in your past. With the brain, it will preferentially store the memories where the emotional arousal is the highest. So you do the most learning, what we call implicit learning, when you are experiencing the most emotions. Now, these patterns that you developed in times that were stressful came about in service of your survival. So it was your brain and your nervous system's way of trying their best to keep you safe. The problem is that sometimes those patterns or that software doesn't serve you so well anymore. Now, sometimes that software can be too chaotic and we can become unstable or overwhelmed by emotions and have racing thoughts. And this makes it hard for us when we're facing stresses to make a good decision or to act with resilience and flexibility. On the other hand, our neural software can make us become too rigid. And in this case, we might get stuck. We may find it hard to find other options or think that this is the only way. And it doesn't lead to resilience or help us when facing demands. If our past has been filled with a lot of chronic or traumatic stress, anytime that we try to move outside of our comfort zone, we may move into fight or flight, because that's the software programming that we may have developed in the past to keep us safe. Alternatively, we may shut down whenever we're facing stresses, and that can make us feel flat, helpless, and hopeless. When we consider the hardware of the brain, we can look at the amygdala, which is in the survival brain, lower down in the center, as being like a smoke detector that's on the lookout for danger. And it's known with people who worry a lot or who've experienced high levels of stress that there can be an increased sensitivity and even a thickening of the amygdala itself. The part of the brain in the thinking brain, or the outer cortex known as the prefrontal cortex, can be what helps us to down-regulate. So it's a little bit like a parent would calm down a child that was really scared with something. Well, the prefrontal cortex can help to calm down the amygdala. We know that under chronic stress or traumatic stress that the integration between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala can be affected. And this means that rather than having that nice calming effect, the prefrontal cortex can't calm down the amygdala. And this is what tends to lead us to having that increase in fight or flight activity, or that lack of regulation whenever we're facing stresses or demands. So our capacity for resilience is greatly diminished when that prefrontal cortex and amygdala integration isn't working so well. We also know that within the nervous system, that from chronic or traumatic stress, the vagal brake may become inhibited. So this is the part of the vagus nerve that has a branch that goes to our heart and can slow our physiology down when it's engaged. And if that fine-tuned mechanism is affected, we know we tend to move more into nervous system dysregulation. Now, the good news is that you can deliberately cultivate experiences so that you can relearn ways to become more resilient and create new software programs, and you can actually reshape the hardware of the brain. So areas like the prefrontal cortex having its effect on the amygdala, and also affecting the vagal brake to slow your physiology back down so that you're more likely to meet demands with greater self-regulation and flexibility in your responses. Through bottom-up regulation, we can learn to work in the body with things like the vagal brake to send messages up to the brain that help with regulation. And through top-down regulation, we can learn to engage the prefrontal cortex, so that has an effect in calming down the amygdala and its survival responses that it sends down into the body. And both of these bottom-up and top-down regulation practices I'll be teaching this year in the Vagus Nerve Masterclass and also the Vagus Nerve Program. So if this is something you'd like to learn more about, then I'd love to have you join in.